Guys, I have a confession to make. I've been delulu. Does anybody know this word? What does delulu mean?
Delusional?
Yes, I've been delusional. I've been delusional because I thought that my weaknesses are my limitation. And that because I have weaknesses, that I cannot be strong. Who of you guys, please raise your hand, has weaknesses, be it fears, doubts, blaming yourself or others? Who has ever experienced that? And raise your other hand because we're in the circus. If you have ever let those limitations stop you from doing what you want to do. Congratulations, you all sign up to the club of the Delulu people. Because that's a scam. So, we're Toastmasters, we're here to improve. And I want to show you today the framework, because I'm a big fan of frameworks. Because often it's this approach of like how to do things, but the how is not the right question. The framework of how to do it, that's the right approach. So I want to teach you my framework of how I turn weaknesses into strengths. Who's down for that? Woo! Amazing. So, I have a framework, it's called ADR. And actually, I wanted to have a whiteboard where I would write stuff down, but you just picture it. ADR. Can you take your sheets, turn them around, I'm sorry for abusing them, and write down ADR? And A in capital letters, please, because it's very important. So, ADR sounds like a fancy job title that you can find on LinkedIn. It's like the next edition for SDR, BDR, whatever. ADR is an acronym that I just made up because I didn't find any better way, so ADR is what we're working with. ADR, the A stands for acknowledgement. And we're going to stay with the A. So, what I saw, I grew up in poor conditions. I grew up in Germany, but I grew up with a single mother and 3 siblings. So there was lack of everything in my childhood. Also, one thing that I experienced a lot was lack of attention. So the one thing I never learned in my childhood was to acknowledge myself. So I would always try to focus on developing more skills, becoming better so that I can get more attention. But I would never acknowledge the weaknesses that I have, because I always thought that when I'm weak, I cannot be accepted. And this is the first part that made me join the Delulu Club, because I believed my weaknesses are my limitation. So when we look at the word acknowledge, does anybody know this word or what it means? Acknowledge, the definition of acknowledge is to admit the existence or truth of something. So we want to find out where we are and who we are, because if we don't know where we are, how are we supposed to change our weaknesses, right? So the first part is acknowledging where we are, what our weaknesses are. And I can tell you by experience, it's not always easy. And I can tell you another secret. The things that you resist the most, that which you don't want to admit and acknowledge, those are the things that will bring you forward. So take your time for yourself, take a pen and a paper, and write down the things that make you believe that you're weak and that you don't want to admit to anyone and to yourself. So, is the first part clear? Acknowledgement?
Yes.
Cool. Second part is decision. Because now we know what our problem is, what our situation is. Now we need to come to a decision. The definition of the word decision is, when you look at the etymology of the word, it's to cut something off. So, we need to cut something off. What do we need to cut off? The self-judgment. Because when we don't want to admit stuff, there's also always self-judgment included. So we want to get rid of all the voices in our mind that tell us, you can do this, you're not good enough, you're too scared, you will never make it. Because all of that is not real, it's just in our minds. So we cut those voices off by acknowledging it and making the decision we want to let go. That's the part of the decision. So we have made the decision, we are aware of it, we have made the decision. The next part and the final part is the realization. And that's a very tricky one, because you can always say, if we look at the slogan for example, Nike saying, just do it, we can always say, just do it, but there's a lot to consider when we don't manage to do things. In the best scenario, You make the decision and you can just do it. Let's say you have a fear of public speaking. What is the best thing to do? Go on stage. Yeah, Toastmasters. So, go to Toastmasters, go on stage. Walk through the fear, because everybody of you guys know the second you walk through the fear, it is not there anymore, because you survived it. What does it teach us? Everything that is in our mind is just an illusion. The fear, the doubt, and the blame that we project onto ourselves or others is just in our minds, and that's the stuff that keeps us from growing. So it can happen that at some point we manage to stumble, because we make a decision, but something stops us from coming into the point of R, which is realization. Realization means to make something happen, to make something real. So what stops us from making things real? It's understanding. So we need to go back to acknowledgement and see what are the points that we are not understanding. And this supports me every single time. Whenever I'm in a point of I see I'm not getting where I want to go, I'm not being able to turn my weakness into a strength, I go back to the question, what am I missing? What am I not understanding about myself? And that's the key to change. That's the key to turning weaknesses into strengths. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Isaiah. Very good for the icebreaker.
You're awesome.
Let's take our time to write down